Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, December 15th, 2022. It is Thankful Thursday, and we're thankful for you that are here with us this morning. We're going to thank you in advance for hitting share. I'm going to ask you this morning to specifically tag, share, at however you want to name it, Black men. As we know, yesterday, we found out that DJ Twitch, it's being reported that he committed suicide. And often in this space, in the Java Cafe, as we call it, we've named the importance of addressing mental wellness or maintaining our mental wellness and addressing mental illness. We've named it It's Okay Not to Be Okay and Not to Feel Okay. Where it becomes a concern is when, and I can't think of other word of rather than wallow or sit in it, to a point where our behavior changes, our daily activities change. If we sip, if we smoke, that may or may not increase. We may get easier or quicker agitated, by things. And so we're getting ready to bring in someone who is not a stranger to the Java Cafe. And some may say, we've heard the stories before. We've heard you all talk about this, but it's perfectly obvious that this is something, and it's trending on social media, that we need to keep having this conversation to ensure that we demystify therapy, that we demystify men expressing their feelings. I put up a post. Anyway, let me bring my guest in because I feel like I'm talking too much. Let's bring in our good brother and friend, Mr. Carlos Enriquez, who is a mental health advocate in his own right. We know that he's a former state representative. He is the host of the PSA show and just a good brother and friend, uncle, son, another new uncle. Shout out to our brother Jamal and his wonderful gift. Yes, sir. Brother Carlos, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well, all things considered. I'm mindful of the season and the fact that we're getting less sun.
Yeah.
Something that people talk about in mental health all the time. I'm in a good place. I actually just recently revisited a round of probably about four different visits with my therapist just to help me get through some things I was dealing with. And it's always a pleasure to kind of work through some things and come out and see yourself on the other side. So it's a process that I repeat often. And when I need that extra help, I reach out to get that extra help, and I get it. I lean on my therapist heavy. So
let me just jump right in and we've shared our stories before, but you've used the word therapist, you've used the word therapy. You are a Black man raised in urban society, familiar with some of the cultural presumptions about us as being Black men. What was the crossroad to where, or let me back up a little bit. Did you ever view therapy? Did you ever see yourself in therapy? Like, was there
I
a
didn't.
transition for you?
My mother first asked me about it when I was 25 if I wanted to see a therapist because I was doing a lot of mentoring in my neighborhood and I wasn't experienced enough to have some boundaries and separation. So I was taking on a lot of the stresses of the young men that I was helping in my neighborhood. And it was really taking a toll on me. But I rejected it. I was 25. I was hip to all the social norms of we don't go to therapy. That's for people that are crazy. That X, Y, and Z, right? All those stigmas were in the back of my mind at 25. And then as I got older, I started to mature a little bit more. And what actually opened me up to it was a men's group at Morningstar Baptist Church that I attended, and was a men's fellowship group, much like the space that DDs Cry just created. It wasn't clinical; it was just men sitting around talking and sharing their story, and it was multi-generational. And when I started to hear other men tell similar stories that I experienced, and that sharing their experiences, it kind of opened me up to the idea of there is a lot of conversation. There's a lot that men don't say, and that kind of opened me up to then seeing a therapist or looking for a therapist, joining other men's fellowship groups. Shout out to Don Osgood, who led
Yes.
that group and continues to do that kind of work. And that kind of moved me along. And then I had some experiences in some low points in my life. I was part of a therapist group when I was incarcerated for about 3 months, and then I continued it when I came home from that. And so it's helped me in several different times throughout my life. I've seen the benefits of it, and I'm a big proponent of it.
So that was the what was the process like for you? In it seems like it was good, and you kind of got merged into from your mom asking you what, because I remember you were like attending Morning Star, maybe heard about the group. Was there any transition point or any one point where you said, this is it, I'm just going? And let's speak maybe to the individual therapy, because I think the group,
Yeah.
might be more embraced, but the individual therapy, when or what was it like when you said, I'm going to call and talk to one person?
Well, it was interesting because it wasn't just like a magic pill, right? It wasn't just you
Okay.
pick up the phone, you meet a therapist, and that therapist is your all. I actually had to visit a couple of. I've had probably about four different people that I saw. Kind of like a first date. The first date with one was like, nah, not feeling the way you talk. One person was very clinical, and this was all about depression, and all about kind of very physician terms, almost clinical terms is what they call it. And I needed somebody that could balance, that could actually just talk to me as a human being, but had the knowledge, the clinical knowledge. And so I found one, and the scheduling changed, and I lost that woman that I was going to for a while when I was a state rep on Beacon Hill. And then years later, I actually found the therapist that I've been using for the last 6 years now. Was actually a couples therapist. The woman that I was dating at the time, we were seeing him as a couples therapist, because she also suggested therapy. I was dating her, and she was like, I think early in our dating, she said, "What kind of baggage do you have? Emotional baggage?" And I was like, "Baggage? I don't carry no stinking baggage. What kind of man carries baggage?" And little did I know I had all this baggage. So I get into couples therapy. We're no longer, at some point we no longer become a couple. But I liked his style so much, and it helped me so much in terms of just kind of practical things that he talked about that I could really apply in my life and see the benefits of it. And I've been with him for the last 6 years. I've referred friends to him, strangers, anybody that I can talk to about it. He's for me, he's a perfect therapist for me.
When you say
So it's different for everybody.
it is, but for you, what are some of the things where you say perfect? Because it might be some folks may not know right now what they don't know and what they need. And so maybe
Right.
introducing a couple of things that you might look for. In dating, we want a certain look, we want maybe a certain financial status or whatever. What are some of the things for you that you were looking for before you got into this 6 year, let's go ahead and say, relationship with your therapist? Because
Right.
it is,
Right.
it really, really
It
is.
is. The first thing I wanted was someone that listens, but much like a relationship, right? I wanted them to listen. Most therapists, when you attend, they create what's called a baseline. So they're going to ask you a lot of questions, from everything from your childhood, to what's going on currently in your life. And I wanted to make sure that he was listening, but listening to learn who I was, and listening to learn my habits, and not necessarily making a judgment call on who I was, right? Because you don't know who somebody is, and that's a big part of mental health. You're not going to figure somebody out. Even your therapist doesn't know all about you. They only know what you tell them. So I wanted to make sure I was comfortable in that setting. Before COVID, it was, he's got a comfortable office, nice couch, some tea, good books. It was a good environment for me to be in, that kind of calmed me down and didn't make me anxious. So I was looking for that. He is a white man, so I was looking for cultural competency. Can I need to talk about things that a black man goes through, but can he relate? How much can he relate? And is he honest enough to say, all right, I don't know what that's like. However, and then be able to pivot and say, I know it from this point of view, and all I can do is tell you from this point of view. So he had all those things and kind of checked all those boxes. And it's and he could challenge me. That was another thing.
Okay.
I can't really bullshit them. Much like in a relationship, sometimes you look for someone you can steamroll. Sometimes you want that equal balance. You want to be equally yoked, as they call it.
Yeah.
And I got that from him. So if I tried to be witty and outsmart him or deflect something, he would come right back to it. And almost sometimes, we could get into it like, oh, you trying to be a smart ass. No, you're trying to be a smart ass. And then, we would go through that process. But it was all to the good. So it's been great.
And I'm hearing that it's been successful. And the fact that you've been with them for 6 years says a lot. One of the things that you named, Carlos, was that in that transition period, you were in a relationship and the young woman encouraged you to go to therapy. I put up a post yesterday on Facebook and I asked, because we talked about this kind of before, that from a real, just human perspective, we've talked about the perspective that women appreciate brothers that are addressing their health overall, but especially maintaining mental wellness and then addressing their mental illness. So I put a post up and said, ladies and men, where it's applicable, is it attractive dealing with a man that deals with their emotions and also dealing with their mental wellness? And most of the women were in there, yes, 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 sexy, it's attractive, yes, wonderful, da 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 da. A couple of
Right.
brothers too.
Sounds good in practice.
But Gail Hainville chimed in and said, this is all good, but do we create the space? And what is the, I think she used the word ridicule. And we've talked about this before, that while on one hand, and I'll name that we're speaking from a typical regular, heterosexual relationship sort of model. On one hand, women state that they, want the man to express their feelings and whatnot. But sometimes when they begin to unpack, you might find out some things and the frailty sometimes and the vulnerability that's required for this man to back up, go through this stuff and heal. Sometimes some sisters don't know how to respond.
Right.
And
That's a very good point. Well, and I think there's 2 points in that. One,
yes,
the healing process is a very individual process,
yes,
right? So even though I'm in a relationship, I'm engaged, my therapy is my therapy. And so I kind of picture it it's my solo road. Whether I'm in a relationship, whether I'm not, this is my path I have to walk. So, it's, even though it can spill if you're in a relationship, it does spill. Even if you're not in a romantic relationship, it'll change your friendships. It'll change how you relate to everybody. It should change how you relate to people at work. It should change how you relate to people when you're walking down the street. So with the part we're talking about in terms of hetero or even relationships in general, a lot of the things we do that you discover in therapy are things that you've learned over time. Things that have happened to you from childhood as early as 6, 7, or 8, things that happen to you when you're teens, defense mechanisms you grew up, just kind of mental conditioning. So when we say that women are really prepared for it, they're not used to it, right? Most people are not used to men being open with their emotions. Most women aren't used to, or people in general, used to a man having an emotionally mature response and saying, "Hey, I really don't like the language you're using with me right now." What they're used to is him barking back at them, and that's comfortable because it's familiar. But when I say, listen, I need you to change the way you speak to me, because when you speak to me, it affects me like this, and I don't like to feel like that. And if you continue to do this, you leave me no choice but to put some space in between us. Now, a lot of people ain't used to hearing that in a
I
relationship.
was trying to
And
hold the
it takes
laugh.
some emotional maturity. See what I'm saying? It takes some emotional maturity to be like, what did he just say to me? So those that appreciate it, it's for the good, but it takes some conditioning on both ends for you to unprogram yourself to all the reactions that you learn. And therapy helps with that. It helps you see, and you still do the work. I don't want people to think that the therapist does the work for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going to physical therapy. You twist your knee or your ankle, they tell you to take this band home and stretch every couple of hours and move your ankle around. If you don't move your ankle around, your ankle stays effed up.
Yep.
Now, same thing with therapy. They give you some tools. Go home and practice this. When you're feeling like this, try this. When you're feeling like this, try this. If you don't do it, nothing changes. So there's some work that you have to do, and that's what I think. That's where it's helped me, because I like the tools. I want to be able to do it myself. Show me how to do it, and I'll unprogram my need to please people because I grew up in a household that had high standards for me. That makes me work over too hard because I want to please everybody. Like, show me how to uncode that out of myself, and I'll do the rest myself.
That's one of the things that I appreciate about you, because in like the past, like 3, 4, maybe 5 years, we've had this conversation about therapy, and often you refer to the tools that your therapists have gave you. And so I want to come back to that. One of the things, and were you able to make your second point? You talked about the fact of people being conditioned and maybe in relationships, the other person not being ready. Was there a second point, or you got it? Because
Yeah, the other part was that it's still an individual journey. Like, whether regardless of what the other person responds to or doesn't respond to, your therapy and your healing is yours.
you mentioned, Carlos, individual therapy, and I'm going to go a couple of different ways here, and you can pick whichever way you want to go with it. That the therapists and other people and the facade that we put on to the public, sometimes to our spouse, to our family, the individual may be going through something on the inside that is not visible to those on the external, unless you have that relationship and you really check in and know. One of the things that I saw, not just with DJ Twitch, but Robin Williams and some others, is this thing, but he was so happy. There's the video that was posted of him and his wife dancing in front of the Christmas tree on Sunday. I'm referring to DJ Twitch. There is, the dancing and things that he was known for with Ellen. And so some of the sentiment I've seen online is people are really surprised because, oh, I thought, and he appeared. But the response to that I've also seen is, you never know what that individual is going through. Go ahead, sir.
Right. And I think I really don't like the response of they look so happy, because we've seen it enough times, and we as individuals know better ourselves. You know what I mean? We know, if you know comedy, comedians are some of the most tortured souls. Like, they draw from pain, they draw from society. We all know that when we're alone and there's no one else. But sometimes we can't see it because it's not even visible to ourselves. Sometimes you're doing something for so long that you just think, people say, oh, that's just who I am. That's just how I am.
Conditioning. Yes, yes.
And if you think that, then you can't step out. You can't step out and see yourself. You can't see the changes you're going through, because you might start to normalize it. I know there's a difference, and I reach out to friends now, and I would have never said this 10 or 15 years ago, but there's been times, multiple times in my life, where I know I'm depressed, because those are the days where I go 3 or 4 days without taking a shower, without brushing my teeth, without brushing my hair, without talking to anybody. You know what I mean? And sometimes those have gone on for weeks. And those aren't the things that you talk about over drinks or when you're out partying. People don't see it. So, but you know it. You know when you're sitting in it, and then someone will invite you out, and you'll be like, oh, I'll get dressed and I'll shower, I'll present myself. But that is a facade. It's not indicative of what you're saying to yourself, what's going on inside of you. And the truth of the matter is, we're complex beings. We barely know ourselves, never mind knowing someone else from looking in. We barely know why we react in anger to certain things, except for that makes me angry. We don't always tie it back to, oh, I saw that when I was 7. Oh, I saw that when I was 13. I was hurt then, and I'll never let them hurt me again. So now I had no feelings. Like, we don't always do that backtracking and that mapping to figure out who we are, and then make the decision whether we want to keep that or whether we want to let it go. Does it serve us well, or does it put us in trouble? And so, I hope people start paying more attention to themselves, and then they'll be able to see more in other people. They'll be able to see themselves in other people and relate a little bit better that way.
That's one of the goals of today, is raising and just getting people to listen. And I always keep it real about the fact that most of the folks that are drawn into this space are aware. They come because we have a commonality in values and things. But again, this is why we ask folks to hit that share button and maybe tag some men so they can understand and see. Carlos, we can go so many different ways. When you talk about the unpacking and you refer to, things from your childhood and whatnot, I would presume, though you've done what some people may call shadow work or work in the back, did your therapist help you unlock a lot of the things to which you just referred, that you may not, you made the reference point that maybe we don't even know where we are or what we're dealing with. And so was therapy, that I'm talking individual now, was individual therapy, laying on that black couch or sitting on that Zoom or whatever, did that help you unpack? First, be aware, unpack and process, and then leave with the tools to address it. Did therapy help you with that?
In some ways, very much so. So
Okay.
I had to bring it into the room, though. You know what I mean? Again, the therapist doesn't know how I grew up, didn't live in the household. So I at least have to paint the picture. I have to bring everything into the room. And that's why I tell people, as long as you're not telling the therapist that you're going to, and not saying that you shouldn't, but if you're going to harm somebody else or self harm, that therapist doesn't have to take action. Everything else besides that is confidential. So the more you can bring in the room, the more you have somebody helping you put the puzzle together and help make the map. So he was actually hear me say something about something current and then ask me, why do I do that? Oh, I did this. And he say, why? And I have to sit with it for a second. And thinking that I'm smart, I'm trying to come up with an answer. And then he might challenge that answer. And well, where did you get that from? How long have you been doing that? And then my mind is starting to map back. Now he's helping me map that I wouldn't normally have that thought. Now I'm like, well, I've always wanted to make my parents proud. And he says, well, when did you really feel like you did? And then, then I can unpack, wow, because I didn't walk across the stage in high school in 1993 and had to repeat my senior year, even though I was a super nerd, but I wanted to be cool. I was actually felt shame from 1994. I carried it for about 15 years. And he was like, well, when did you put it down? And I said, I don't think I put it down until I was in the state house chamber being sworn in, and my mother and father were on my right and my left in the chamber, and I got to look at their faces. It was like me graduating, and it came off of me in that moment. But I didn't even know that I had been carrying that letdown and my shame internally, and no one's saying it to me, but I'm saying it to myself, like, oh man, like you were supposed to do this. I wonder how they look at you. That negative self-talk. I had been doing that for 12, 15 years.
And
And
see,
so that's the kind of mapping that he helped me do, was just kind of backtracking and making me find it. So then the issue with the tool belt comes in, it's like, okay, it's negative self-talk. When you get into that space, what helps you get out of it? And he would give me exercises. Um, they seem trivial, like, close your eyes and then tell me what you can hear, what you could smell, and what you can feel. And I didn't understand it at first. I couldn't even do it at first because I kept thinking, tell me what you, and he would say, I'll tell him what I was thinking. He would say, tell me what you feel, and I would tell him what I'm thinking. And he was like, man, for a smart guy, you just don't get it. And I'm like, oh shit, is he trying to be smart? Like, he said, I asked you for your feeling, not thinking. And so feeling is an emotion, it's not a thought. And it wasn't until I learned how to the tool was calming my mind and being in the present. So if I'm thinking, I can go to the future, I can go to the past, I can go anywhere when I'm thinking. When I'm using my other senses, when I'm using smell, sound, and touch, those are all present senses. You can't time travel in those senses. So breathing and centering myself and doing that was a tool for me, and I use it all the time. I start to drift into negative self-talk. I wish I didn't do that in my life. I hope this doesn't work. Oh, hold on. Let me close my eyes. Let me take some deep breaths. I feel the fabric of this chair. I feel the Christmas tree. I can smell the Christmas tree behind me, the pines. You know what I mean? That's a tool that I
no, no,
can
no.
use
Go ahead and do a
over and
little
over
more
and over.
because you was doing a demonstration. Go
Yeah,
ahead, go ahead.
I feel the fabric. That's what I'm doing. I feel the fabric of the chair. I can only hear. I got the ear pods in, so I don't hear anything, but I can smell the trees. You know what I mean? Like I can feel the heat from this ring lamp on me right now, on this shea butter on my face. But it puts me in the moment, and I can use that tool whether I'm going to the therapist or not. I can use that tool whenever I want, and I use it so often.
So can we just walked up with this is a tool thing that anybody watching right now, and yes, we're talking about black men, but our queens on here that support us and whatnot. So in a time of anger or anxiety, is that a good tool to try to just kind of maybe think, okay, let me pause for a minute. What do I smell? What do I feel? And smell and feel and hear,
And
correct?
here,
And
yep,
hear.
yep.
And so that puts you in the present.
And touch, what you can feel. Yep. So that puts you in the present, and you can use those not just anger, but if you're anxious,
Exactly.
if you're so all those emotions are a lot of our emotions are secondary emotions. They're a reaction to something else we're thinking or feeling, right? So
Teach.
when you're feeling anxious, I got to go to this meeting, I got to make this presentation, I'm feeling anxious. Well, you're feeling anxious because you want to control the future. You want to know that this is going to work out right. You're trying to time travel into the future and control some shit you can't do. When you're angry or sad, you're usually thinking about something that already happened in the past. You're time traveling back in the past. You're reliving a situation. You're suffering something that's not even in the present. So again, your mind is drifted off, and the challenge I used to have is trying to control my mind. I'm a thinker, so my mind is going all over the place.
Right.
So that was just one tool belt. But then there's other activities that require your full attention that don't allow your mind to do that. If you're reading a book, you can't drift off and read a book. You hear adults say, I have a problem reading the book or the Bible, or I keep losing focus. You're reading. If you're losing focus, it means you're not in the present. If you're reading a book and really comprehending what you're reading, you're right there in that book. If you're exercising and you're doing it correctly and you're paying attention to your form, whether it's yoga, whether it's bike riding, whether it's jogging, your body is too busy to be thinking about some other stuff. It's focused on the task at hand. So when you focus your mind on something, and that was an elevation of that same tool. How do I focus my mind so I'm not traveling into the future, I'm not traveling into the past, and I'm staying balanced in the middle? And the more I'm focused in the present, the less I feel sad and depressed, angry and shameful, the less I'm anxious and rigid about, I can't let this happen again. I can't take no shorts. I can't take no L. I can't take no disrespect because it happened before, and I need to control that it never happens again because I ain't never going to feel like that. You're trying to control something that you don't have control over. So those are the tools that I get from my therapist. That's why I love my therapist. Shout out Andre.
Shout out to Andre. And we want to thank Andre because I've known you for years, brother, and I've had the honor and privilege of experiencing your journey. And it's dope as hell. It really, and I'll back up because I felt a little waterwork. But no,
Hey, let it out. Let it out.
no, 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 'cause
That's another thing black men got to do. So I'm talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's a father, and he was like, he's going through it. And often I find myself, talking to my friends about mental health, and I have a little bit more tools, and I have more boundaries, so I don't take it on. And he's going through it with his sons, and he's like, I got to stay strong for my sons. And I'm like, what does that mean? And especially for men, like I'm like, what does that mean for you? And he was like, well, I got to hold it all together, because I'm nauseous. I want to cry. And I'm like, why does holding it all together mean that you can't cry in front of your son? Why is that part of holding it together? Wouldn't it serve your son to see that a man can cry? Your son cries, so why wouldn't it be? Might be better for him to see his father cry and hear that he's feeling emotional. So trying to undo these programmed things that we think like we can't cry. Women don't like to see us cry. They don't know what to do when a man cries. So a lot of women don't know what to do. Men look at each other like, hey, you crying, bro? Like, but that's a programming that we received at 5. Be a big boy. Don't cry. Be a man. Toughen up. And so, but we all know it's a lie because we all go in the dark room and cry.
And
we all cry when our friend gets killed, or we lose somebody, or mom passes, or grandma passes. So we got to wait till it's an extreme, till we overflowing, and then then it's okay to cry. Nah, let that shit out.
Let's also name what you named often to a particular statement you made in that point of, if a little boy falls at 5, don't cry and be like a little girl. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's name, because I thought you was going to say that because that's often a reference point. Carlos,
well, they use that when they get older. When you get to be a teenager, they say stop being a little
okay.
B, right?
Yep.
That's when it's a gender-based insult. So it advances on you. First is be a big boy. Now you're soft if you're crying. You know what I mean? Like men cry. Everybody cries. It's just a physical thing. Like we make such a big deal out of it as if it's a sign of weakness. Warriors cry. Combat veterans cry. Stone cold killers cry. Like world leaders cry. Why would we make it something why are we going to lie to other men about it and act like we don't cry? Because we're uncomfortable when we do it?
Let's stay right in this vein. 3 things I want to do before we go. One is I want to stay in this vein and name and validate, because some may ask, why? Well, not folks in here, but why is it so different? And why is there a particular focus on Black men and mental health? And I want to continue because I had notes here and you had started. I want to name and validate the difference, and all of women have different issues and men do too. But everything that you just named around expectations and conditioning for men, women don't have that. And so can we just name, by your experience, observation, being a man of the world, let's validate and name some of the things that contribute to Black men on an external macro level. We talked about individuals. Let's talk about Black men and what it is, the extra baggage, as you referred to earlier, that comes with being a Black man. Then I want to go to the comments because they are going in, and then I want to leave with some affirmations.
Okay, no doubt. I was taking notes and I did some reading earlier. So I think it's a unique experience, as you know, to be a black man.
Yes, sir.
Um, and as it relates, we are social beings, right? Human beings are social beings. You're not brought into this world through immaculate conception. Someone conceived you. You are programmed to be part of a society, whether it's a family unit, whether it's a social unit, whether you create it on your own, however you create it. You're not built to be alone. So therefore, how you interact in the world, in your society, in your environment, dictates a lot about how your brain works, how you feel about yourself. And so there's a lot of negative images and portrayals of black men from white supremacy societies, from Disney movies, all the way down to even what we do to ourselves as black men. Because I don't want to just point out, we have to own our own, the messages we send each other back and forth, the lack of love that we show each other, and even from our sisters. Like sometimes you get a negative message. So there's that. There's your socioeconomic standing in a world where you need money to survive, unfortunately, on this planet. And being at the lower end of that totem pole puts an increasing pressure on you, especially when the expectations are still the same for you to be a protector, a provider, and all these other things. So those things start to weigh on you as an individual, as a black man, and you don't have the outlets as a man to let them out. You broke up with your high school sweetheart at 17. You couldn't go to your boy's house and cry on his couch. He wasn't having it. Women might have that outlet. You've been trained to bottle that up. You've been trained to, you most likely live in an impoverished environment, um, which breeds violence, which breeds self-loathing, which breeds all these negative things, which shortens your life expectancy. Things that human beings are aware of, right? You ain't got to graduate. You could drop out the 8th grade, and you still know around your way, when you know how old your uncles were when they passed away. You still know that your family members had cancer. You still know these things without having the Harvard, academia tell you about these things. So you're aware that your life is shorter. You're aware that they're telling you that you're probably going to die by 18 or 21. And that's a multi-generation. You could talk to pastors that throughout Boston will tell you they grew up hearing the same thing and they're 70 years old. So when you're aware of all these things as a black man, they weigh on you, and they weigh on you mentally. And those things then begin to weigh on you physically. And your physical health and your mental health start to deteriorate. And so it is an incredible burden to carry and not have healthy places to expunge it, to even express how you're feeling. And that's why, for me, what kicked that off was that men's fellowship group. I did not realize that so many of us, strangers, right? You become insular, you know your group, they're going through, but then you hear the same stories from men over there and over there, and he has a different background from me, and he's 60, and he's 18, and they're saying the same thing that I thought. That was just my thought. That opened me up that we're all dealing with a lot of the same things, and that we're better off talking to each other about it. There's no better advice than you're going to get from somebody that's kind of going through the same thing or been through that already, and really change the pathway of my life. So I've been an advocate probably since like 2011. That's why when I became a state representative, they were like, "What committees do you want to serve on?" Mental health, substance abuse. Put me on it because that's what my neighborhood goes through. We wasn't even talking about it yet, but I knew that was there in my neighborhood, and that's what I wanted to represent.
Thank you. And then the reason I wanted to do that, because for any brothers that are listening later, I wanted to validate what the extra. I'm going to go to some comments, and Heidi makes a good point here. Go ahead, sir.
Let me just throw one thing out, because I want, this might be another show when if you get some fathers on here. Black men also get beat up a lot for lack of being fathers, for fatherhood. And I want to throw out, because I've talked to a lot of fathers, I don't think, with all that we just talked about, fatherhood had to be one of the most scariest things for men in that situation. Dealing with all those things I just listed, imagine becoming a father at a teenage or before you reach any emotional maturity, and how that also affects the fabric of our community, because I don't think that gets talked about a lot. I think black men get demonized for not being good fathers, and not uplifted for the good fathers that they are. And there's a lot of conversation we should have in that space. I know when I was expecting to be a father, it was one of the scariest things that I'd ever dealt with in my life.
It is for presumably two things I want to name for sort of some subgroups within this where we're talking about black men. One is either the lack of an example of fatherhood, which can contribute to some of the fear, The other piece is the fear that comes of being a father, as you named. And then when they know they're a father, for whatever reasons, and you talked about taking responsibility, we got to own some of the stuff that we contribute. And sometimes there's what, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, the term that has been used, and you know what, words matter. We've talked about this, not having peace with the mother of your child. Let's frame it like that.
Right.
Those are huge contributing factors to a large subset of Black men. The other piece is that when we were talking about being a Black man, I kept sitting here thinking, Carlos, I deal with all of that. And then to be gay too, that's a whole nother, so there's two other shows.
Whole nother.
Yeah.
Because of how the rest of us have been programmed to look at somebody that's gay. Like it's
But
just
can I correct
programming.
you? Not correct you, but can I but to share something? When you say the rest of us, that might be interpreted by some that, those who aren't gay were taught that. No,
just men in general.
And even the ones that have embraced their sexuality, you still got
you still were programmed the same way I was, right? You were still the same programming, and so it's the shame. Are they judging me? Do they think I'm weak? All kinds of different things get played in. But the color of my skin. On top of that, there's so many different levels to the shit that we don't discuss openly, right? And sometimes you got, you might have to feel like, I got to punch somebody in their mouth so that they know that, don't get it twisted. So yeah, all that plays, and it's just programming. It's just a mental program we have from a young age that we've allowed to fester without challenging it. And therapy or your own shadow work will help you challenge it and decide who you want to be and how you want to treat people.
I want to go back to Heidi's point because folks are really going, and I want to make sure that we kind of engage here.
I'm here all morning. We could do a long one. I'm ready.
Listen, my next appointment ain't till 11. Where was it? Heidi had said something. We were drawing the example of women having different issues, but I'm just going to go into some of the comment. There's a lot here. Hold on. Naisha is here this morning and said, he's dropping gems. I hope
peace to Naisha.
Naisha, can you do me a favor? Can you put the Pure Spark link in the comments? Because I definitely want to walk away with look. Always sharing some resources. I had a great conversation with her yesterday, and we were sharing about DJ Twitch, and she's amazing. Naisha, please put the link in there, please. Toy Burton, and I want to welcome those who are Carlos.
Yeah, that's the space I was mentioning earlier.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
We are casting on DDs Cry's page today as well, so we want to welcome them and thank them for being here today. DDs Cry, as Carlos mentioned, has a virtually monthly group for Black men. This is a peer-led group, not clinical. It's a space to share with other Black men, a place for support, affirmation resources. The next group is January 10th. Email ddscry@yahoo.com for the Zoom link. Though Toy is a female and curates and oversees and founded DDs Cry, that group is led by Milton Jones of the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. So it is led by a man.
Yeah. We can stay in the comments, but also this new generation, because I've been speaking to some of my friends, this new generation is growing up in a society different from ours. So with the added pressure of, when we talked about socializing and how to engage in social, you're seeing rises in suicide, especially not just from adults, but also children and teens, because they have a pressure that we do not know and can't relate to. I was joking talking to my mother, who is, I can't say how old she is because I'll get in trouble. Considerably, she's some years older than me. She's a couple decades older than me. But she talked about how she got caught up on Instagram and found herself watching it for almost 2 hours. And I'm like,
wait a minute, I could never see Miss Sandy sitting in a chair.
Right. I still got to show her how to read her DM. So that's what I was like, what? So, and I know what happens to me at 46. I'm like, I've been on here too long. Look at my screen time. Some of these kids have grown up. At least we're anchored in a time in a society where we're not trying to hold to that standard, right? I'm not trying to compete with anybody on Instagram. I do my little flossing here and there, put up some fancy vacation pictures at best. But that's, you know what I mean? That's it. But these kids, that's a lot of their main socialization, and it sets a bar that they can't reach, which means that they internalize that as shame when they don't dress that way, when they don't live that lifestyle. And it can cause depression. It can lead into those factors. So I want the parents that are paying attention, for men and women that are parents to boys and girls, but especially boys, can they pay attention to that? Because boys have a different reaction. Girls, I think, are trying to keep up visually, I think boys are having a hard time with dating, with anything because they can't keep
The
up with
body
anything on
image,
there.
body image,
Body
I think
imaging
is
is there,
impacted.
absolutely.
I think it's impacted.
So
Go ahead.
I mean, it's just I just wanted to throw that out there so people don't miss it. It's not just an adult thing like this. These are things that start, like we're saying, start in childhood, and their childhood is vastly different from our childhood. They're not out playing big wheels, playing hot peas and cold butter. They're swiping through, seeing $1 million lifestyles and seeing people with, uh, enhanced bodies. They're seeing a whole different kind of thing. So people should pay attention to that and how that impacts their mental health as well.
Carlos, we haven't even named the pulse. It's interesting using this term, as I just got an email from the Health Commission about rising numbers with respiratory, between RSV, the flu, and COVID. But we haven't named the full impact and the demonstration of the impact of COVID in a mental health space for specifically young people. And so what I heard from you there is, while we're talking about Black men in general, parents, y'all need to check in on y'all children. Sit
Yeah,
down
their
with
mental
them,
health is
and
critical.
and I'm old school. If y'all paying the bill, they need to log into their phone. You need to scroll through and see some of the stuff, because if you paying that bill, that's your right to do that. And I know there's a balance with their independence, but for their safety and for their mental
I'm on
wellness.
some take the phone away and give them a book. Take them a phone. Take them and have them some time. Even if you have to create it in your house where you're just having
With
conversation.
them.
Your children need to practice conversation that's not through a digital medium, face to face. They need to learn how to read a face. There's eyes. There's you know what I mean. There's nonverbal communication that people don't learn unless they're face to face and have those interactions. So please make that. I mean, that mental health of children. What's the old saying? It's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men.
I don't know. You're a little bit older
Something
than
to
me.
that. I think I messed that up, but I used to hear someone say it all the time. But it's rather than having to send me to therapy, if someone had I'm not saying no knock to my parents, but there's certain things you can learn as a kid that might prevent you from going down certain roads when you get older.
Listen, there's so much here, and I'm seeing this come up. This has come up often, and I want to bring us back to just some of the affirmations. I'm going to ask you all to participate with these affirmations as well.
I like
But
that one.
Alaska, we listen. There is, as Carlos was talking about, setting that precedence and that culture and space at home. It is important, parents, to really check in with your children. Yes, we're talking Black men, but
Yeah.
generally children as well.
Yeah.
Naisha did put.
And be okay not knowing. Be okay not knowing what all the tools are to use in your home. Be okay saying I might not be the best parent. I'm better than my mother or father, but I want to be even better. Be open to looking up resources, Googling, talking to somebody, and be like, what else would help me do this? Like once we are open to correction and improvement, it helps your whole family. So, people should be open to that.
And the community and the world as a whole. Stan made a point that families don't sit together to dinner every morning. I was raised 5 p.m. You were at the dinner table. We used to set the table
Yeah.
and like all of that, and it's so
I mean, I
interesting.
started out like that too until the second and third TV came into the house, and then it started to separate. I mean, it's a choice, and truthfully, parents get tired, and they think it's easier to put them. We got raised on a TV. We got raised up to that until the TV really took over, and then the
Yeah,
TV raised us.
the TV.
So if you were raised by the TV, and their parents were raised by the radio, right? So if you were raised by the TV, it's not strange. It's not a far stretch to let your child be raised by the tablet. So
I'm
again, it's
old,
programming.
Carlos.
So you
Radio.
have to unprogram yourself and be like, oh, I did this. I could do it a better way. Let me be open to taking that tablet away, even though I sat in front of that screen and watched Goonies for hours and the Gremlins and whatnot. You have to unprogram yourself. Don't just repeat the habits that were given to you by your parents.
There is so many nuggets coming out of here. I wanted to also mention Naisha put, as Carlos was talking about, resources and for checking in on our children. Here's a resource Naisha also named. And Naisha, thank you, and Toy and others. James with his work with Black men as well, for sharing resources and working in this space. And so that is a resource there. Stan, we lift and hold you, brother. I'm broken yet
Right.
coachable. That is an this is
That
what we're
part.
talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. And then Toy put DDs Cry here as well to find more information about the group. What I'm going to ask you all to do, Stan, Mackie, who else is in here? Brother Wise, Quincy, The brothers that are in here, just begin to maybe write some affirmations to the other brothers, because as much as we named the valid experiences we go through, I think it's important that we leave the space with affirming who we are. Go ahead.
Can I throw? I want to throw a challenge out there too. So
Go ahead.
I like it. I like it. I want to challenge, especially those brothers you named. Pick up the phone and call them. Right? If you can't get face to face
Ouch,
with them,
ouch, ouch.
pick up the phone, because that's what I'm saying. Like, we're used to giving affirmations now digitally, right? We wish everybody a happy birthday, or when it pops up on our Facebook feed and they get all this one day. Pick up the phone on a off day, call them for no reason at all, and just tell them how. Like, tell I want to tell Jay, and I need to call him. I'm gonna do it here, but James Mackey is an ill dude. Dude lands in the city of Boston, doesn't know anybody, could have just do his own private business. Instead, he gets involved in community. He's like 10, 15 years in now. The dude has done it for the love of community and the young people he's around, does it genuinely, is everywhere all the time, takes the time to make sure his appearance is on point all the time, always trying to improve himself, reaching out to other people. The man becomes a husband and a father, is an amazing husband and father, as far as we all know, right? And starts a business because he's different and he's cut from a different cloth. That's incredible to me. And if you know James Mackey, if you're closer to him than I am, hug that brother for me, because he deserves the affirmation. And we need it. I know, that's why I dropped the plug. We need it. We need it, and it's deserved. So, and it didn't cost me anything. I don't feel any less of a man by saying that to him.
Somebody to big up somebody else, and that is the thing. Like why I said to you a few minutes ago that, and I'll affirm you here, Carlos. I with every, and it just be 100 with everything that you've been through and everything that you've named, to see you on this journey, and be purposeful about being transparent for the purpose of getting other men intentionally on a road to be well. You share information with our community. You get us mobilized. You are transparent. You are, and another thing that I will say, you have made a decision to make you your own priority. And that, sir, with all due respect to everything that you've been to everybody else, I think that is one of the biggest things that I've observed of you over these years, to just be your authentic, genuine, real, snarky, loving, wise, hip hop expert, opinionated, advising self, sir. I really love and appreciate you, man, because you have been a huge, I talk often about, early on it was the organizing, then it went into the politics, but now it's interesting. We iron sharpeneth iron, and we have helped each other. But I'll just say, you have helped me, sir, become a better man, and I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate you saying that. It's interesting that you say that. It causes me pause, because when we opened up the show and I was talking to my therapist recently, I was in a dark spot. I was stuck, and I was stuck because I had attached myself to who I thought I was. I had attached myself. I was still separating from Carlos Henriquez, the state representative, the former state representative that got screwed over in Boston. I was still detaching myself from that, and I was wrestling, like, because I had adopted that as my identity, and that was never my identity. And what you just named is actually, it took me 3 or 4 sessions to come back to that, and Andre to help me come back to the fact that now who I am is what I've been doing. And that was the affirmation I had to give myself. Like, actually, you've been helping black boys and black men in your community since you were 17, 18 years old, when we was making fake resumes and referring each other to jobs, and giving each other referrals so we could get a job. Like, yeah, he worked for me, great employee. Like, we've been doing that. I've been doing that since I was 18 years old. So it started there, and then it moved to Kinko's, and then it's in my neighborhood, and then it becomes politics. I mean, organized, and then it becomes politics. And so I had to reattach my identity to who I really am and what I do, not a title or a temporary position that I held. It's much bigger than that. And once I affirmed that, it freed me from the past again, allowed me to be more present. And you're right, making myself the priority has been one of my favorite parts of the journey, because it keeps me from the highs and the lows. When I make everyone else the priority, I have a chance to get up real high, but then I dip real low. And a ex partner of mine used to tell me, like, you're great when you're at 10, but you're terrible when you're at 2. I would love for you to just live between 4 and 7. And so that's why I try to I try to maintain like 4 and 7 is realistic. Like, I mean, obviously I want to be 6, 7, 8, but I don't want to be at a 10 if I have to then be at a 2.
Yeah.
Because
That
the 2 is
balance.
because you cannot escape the 2 sometimes. So it is a journey. I mean, what you just talked about is like a 15, almost 20 years, if not more. And I'm anxious. I'm not anxious. I'm excited to continue that journey, and help anybody that needs help that I can reach. So thank you for allowing me to be on the platform. And I know it's community driven, which is why I'm here. And I appreciate your reach.
It's definitely been a just to sit back and see. And I listen, I was there, around during some of the dark moments, and I was not knowing what I was doing, but I used to hound you and be like, yo, yo. Carlos would respond. But and we need that. We need that transparency from others that saw the journey and seeing you come out on the other end. And it's not over yet. You know what I'm saying? I'm
No,
waiting for the
and
book.
the day, yeah, I need to get on that. The days you
Yes.
saw is still me at a 4, 4-ish, 5, right? There were days when I was at my 2s and 3s. When I talked about being when I came home and I was on the couch for weeks, and it was because there were friends of mine that aren't in politics that would come by. I had 2 friends that would come by my house every day, knock on the door. Some days I wouldn't even open the door for 2 or 3 days, and they knew I was in the couch, TV on, heard me. You could probably smell the smoke through the window. They knew I was in there, and I didn't answer the door, and I couldn't. And the next day they were there, and the next day they were there, and they would just knock and leave, just to let me know that they were there. And the reason why I tell that story is because one of them is a woman, and she's a therapist, so she knew what she was doing. Good, great friend. I don't discount it. But one of them was externally is the toughest, hardcore dude I know. Like, shows no emotion, no physical touch, no hugs, no, I miss you. I mean, I've known him for 30 years. Best man at his wedding, what I'm saying? Godfather to his children. That man was at my house every day. That brother was at my house every single day, whether I open the door or not. I might open the door once a week, twice a week. He'd be there for weeks on end. And that kind of brotherhood, that kind of support got me out of the 2 and back into, functioning. So what you talk about with affirmation, especially coming from someone that looks like you, it's critical. It saves lives and it changes lives. And so I encourage everybody, especially the men, don't pass on it, and let your sons see it, and let other black men see it. Let them see you hug another black man so that they can be comfortable with that shit. Like, enough with the taboo. Enough with the We already starved for physical attention. We already got like, oh,
Even more
our
so
fathers
now.
never hugged us. Yeah, like black men barely ever touch. A hand dap and a half done. That's all you get. That's all you get. Like, sometimes you need hugs. Sometimes you
Yes.
need some masculine energy. Sometimes you need another man to give you a hug to be like, yo, here's some of my strength. Take it off of me. A woman can't always give you that.
That's right.
So share it, gentlemen. Please share it with each other.
I've heard women say that. And it's so interesting to hear a brother say that, because I've heard women in different spaces say there's certain things that I just, can't give him. They've said it, from being a single mother, and they've said it from also being a spouse when they're trying to help them generally, away from the relationship components of it. Gentlemen, just that are still in here, we took over the affirmations, but I just really wanted to be intentional about that. And brother Stan is saying, check on your, that's the part, check on your strong friends. Carlos Stan said, call him. I am terrible. Speaking of calling, because and Carlos, you can blame me for
Stan,
social
send me your
media.
number,
Stan, inbox
please.
Carlos the number, or I can send it to you, Carlos.
All
I
right.
need to do better, because me and the phone is just, anyway, pray for me, y'all. Yeah, I'll text in a minute,
We can
but
all do better. We can all do
yeah.
better.
Jasmine Irvin, who was in here, who I believe Carlos, who was former Jasmine. Okay. We need y'all, and we need each other. This Carlos, sir, I think
Charcuterie
is one of
boss.
the. First of all, if y'all need a charcuterie board, please hit this Black-owned business up. Jasmine was on talking about substance use as the director of community engagement for the substance abuse unit at Mass General Hospital. But on the side, she makes these wonderful charcuterie boards, and they are just dope. I'll be placing the order soon, Jasmine. But no, Carlos, I think that this was definitely needed. When I just saw, often when you talk about community driven, oftentimes these come up and thank you, because I hit you less than 24 hours ago. Well, it was after 9, wasn't it? After 9
12, yeah, about 12 hours ago.
Because what I was seeing on social media yesterday, if we're thinking about it, if we're feeling it, Naisha and I talked through it, our whole, community is, and everybody doesn't have the advantage to have the experiences that we've had that drives us to be intentional about mental wellness. And so I appreciate you, man, taking the time to come into the space. We miss you here. I love your journey. And though your journey has taken you, away, but, to a virtual space, we still have access, but
no doubt.
That you being able to grip you up, would be dope. But no, I appreciate you, man. And tell us, you're on Spark FM online every Sunday at 10 a.m.
Sunday at 10 o'clock. Yep. And so I've gotten back. I was spinning just music for a while, but we're getting back into the conversation, trying to keep some light conversation there. So it's really for old cultured heads like us. Those of us that want to clean our house on a Sunday morning, or do yoga or exercise. Check me out. I'm on Spark FM online. It streams through the website. And we do have some mental health tips. We do talk about lifestyle things, and we're going to start bringing on guests at least for the last hour, because I'm probably going to pick up another hour just to feature some people who I think their voices need to be heard as well. So the more we can amplify others, I think is important, especially from our community, because I want people to, we can't show this outpouring of emotion for just celebrities on social media.
That's
and
right.
Not do it for those in our family and our community, because our family and community can see us. And how you think somebody feels in your family if they're depressed, but you shouting out somebody you never met. Like, we gotta, if you're gonna do it all the way around, or at least start in your family, with your friends and in your community. So,
sir, interestingly, so when the sessions, I think I've mentioned you before that I can always tell that
it's feel lighter right now, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I usually feel tired because these conversations pull out of you, but I don't feel that tiredness. Though I know that this was definitely dope. Miss Orange City, you can definitely go back and listen. But Carlos, I'm really thinking about let this be the very first official podcast. Because I haven't converted over to doing a podcast. This is all on Facebook. So I think that this might be the first one that I drop, because it is.
Wait, no, you got the website.
No, and
then you can play music. You could do whatever you want. You get a little bit more freedom, a little bit more control.
I know. Please don't start. Because You by Eric Thomas, the book that I think I mentioned. Did I get a chance to mention it to you yet? You by Eric Thomas, bro. When I tell you some of the stuff, some of the nuggets that you dropped here today, he encapsulates them. And I haven't been reading it. I've been listening on Audible. You, and it is Carlos. That next, because I think you've exhausted levels. It's time for you to go to the next dimension. I think that book, you got to write a book. You got to get ready to start traveling. You got to get ready to put a curriculum together. And that's but I'll be honest with you. I do this, bro. So much work.
I feel you. I know. I started writing. I started writing it like 7 years ago. So I have a folder, and I just need to get back to
exhale. I done tapped into something.
That's self accountability. I just got to do it. I ain't gonna say no more about it. I just got to get it done.
Yeah, and that's where I am as well. But I want to shout out Thaddeus Miles, who's probably not on today, who encouraged me to get that book. And when I tell you, and people use this word so casual, statement, it's changed my life. It's changing my life. And listening to that, and it's going to cause some change and me to walk away from some things to be a better me, but in the long run, it's good. So, all right, I don't want to ramble. Hold on, Carlos, you have to smile more. You have a great smile.
Oh,
look! He turned into 6 years old.
You trying to make me blush?
He literally
trying to make me blush.
Your whole body language, bro. Everything just
trying
came
to make
in.
Me blush.
I'm about to turn
You know,
that
they
into a
used to
meme.
tell me that in politics all the time. They used to be like, you got to smile for your pictures. I'm like, nah, this shit is too serious for me to be smiling all the time. But thank you. I appreciate the affirmation. Thank you so
And we
much.
leave you encouraging with this.
So Orange City, is
It's
that
Miss Guilty, Leslie. I know
oh, I
sometimes
need
you
to
can't
talk
see the
to.
picture.
I need some tips. I've been asking for tips from writers. So if
Heidi,
anyone
her.
that writes out there, please contact me because I just need those like when you hit a wall. You know, do I do an outline? I'm all over the place. Do I just write it all and then try to fuse it back together? Do I get it? I need help. I basically let me put my pride aside. I need help. I need
Both
help.
of them, y'all
Please.
please connect with Carlos. Heidi has a couple of books out. I think
4 years.
Pastor
7 years. Good
so
Lord.
you be encouraged that you are right in it. You said, look at Jesus. You said you wanted to stay between 4 and 7. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time to
Yeah, right? The 4 or 7. Okay. Let me go get some Java. I gotta get some coffee this morning.
listen and put a little Kahlua in it, and we'll be all right.
Oh, it's too early for that. Cut that out. Cut that out.
It's 10 o'clock
Coquito
here.
season. It's Coquito season anyway.
Please. All right. I'm glad that we're leaving with some black joy. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. Lois, I'm going to go pay a couple of bills. I will definitely follow up with you later on this afternoon so I can make sure that my bills are paid because I got to do a couple of things. But I really, really appreciate you. I think Pastor Marion said, stop, do the tools, breathe, and just begin to write. Okay. For some
Sometimes
of
you
us,
need a
it's easier
reminder.
said than done.
She didn't, ain't nobody say it was gonna be easy. She didn't say easy, so I
Mm-mm.
feel her. Let's
I'm
just get
looking
to it.
forward to it. Just so right here, as I often do, you all. Also, my cousin Cheddar Green, whom I honor is naming. Can we get you to commit that when you release the
Uh-oh.
book, that your first appearance will be on Java with Jimmy?
Oh, here you go. Here you go. I think my screen's frozen. I think.
No, what you're supposed to do is go like this.
Can't hold it that still.
Speaking of books, let's just shout out while we're doing affirmations. I believe the good Dr. Falk is releasing 2 books as well. And so let's
Good stuff.
name him as well while we're talking about these wonderful black male authors to which you'll be adding your name to the list soon. All
I don't know
right,
where
I'm
people
rambling
find
now.
the time. I
You
just don't know where they find the time. I need time management skills. That's what I'm gonna get on that today too.
listen, take that.
I think I'm at to schedule time every day, like a writing time, probably.
It is be realistic about it. So if you don't do it, you don't beat yourself up. But also,
Oh, look at you.
I think the droids have the ability that you can do a voice memo and then
Yes,
maybe
they do.
record it.
Yes, they
Oh,
do.
droids
It's
are
a
upgrading.
superior piece of hardware. Absolutely. Saves it as an MP3, MP4. I'll teach you about it later on off air. I don't want to hold the people up. Thank you again. Happy holidays to everybody. Love your loved ones. Love yourself. Love your loved ones.
I took
Just
you out for a
rinse,
minute.
rinse, wash, and repeat. Just wash, rinse, and repeat. That's the cycle.
Yes, sir. Love you, bro. I'll be in touch and give the wife
Love
my
you too,
best.
man.
All right,
I
sir.
will.
Thanks,
Take
brother.
it easy.
Listen, you all, that was one of the most remarkable sessions we've had with our good brother, Carlos Enriquez. Yeah, there's really not that much to say. So I'm going to get off of here. Now I'm tired. I guess because Carlos left the screen, now I'm a little bit tired. I'm going to go sit for about a half an hour and just decompress. But thank you all. Thank you all. Please share this with some men. Hit share on your phone. You can hit copy the link and inbox it to somebody, text it to somebody, or tag them even in the post so they can go and watch. And if there's a particular point, go in and say start watching or speed up to 24.39. That is it for me today and this week. Wow, another week has gone by. Y'all know today's my Friday. So nothing scheduled until Monday morning at 9 a.m. And Carlos, man, we appreciate you. Teresa, I will. Both of y'all are trying to. I love y'all. I'm going to go eat. And I will say that I prepared 3 meals between Sunday and Monday to last me till like today. So I'm pretty good. I just gotta eat it because I don't want to waste that food. I think that's it. Next Friday, I need as many of you to come into the room as possible and be with me with Dr. Joseph Betancourt. Dr. Betancourt is the money behind your Healthy Java. And as you all know, if you follow me on social media, I shared that he resigned from MGH. And so with being the main supporter behind your Healthy Java and everything that he's done to address health disparities in Black and brown communities across the state, but mainly here in Greater Boston, he's going to come in with us next Friday, the 23rd at 9 a.m. And we're going to have a session with him just to check in. And I told him he's not going nowhere. He's actually in a much more influential position in his new position, managing and being the CEO of the Commonwealth Fund out of New York. And so he ain't going nowhere. Okay. Carlos, you know, when my mother starts asking questions, things happen. Is Carlos a motivational speaker? Yes, he is. You can hit me at james@effectivestrategies.com. I'm his booking agent, and we will let you know what his fees are. He flies first class, penthouse rooms only, and the cars that pick him up have to be 2023s and all of that. So, but no, Ma, figure it out, or, you know, he's not in Boston, but anybody that wants to bring him here, as you know, it's well worth the investment. So, all right, folks, I'm going. I think that is it. Today's the 15th, 16th, 19th. Mondays, Monday will be with Dr. Brandy to finish the piece that I started last week about, you know, your goals and being real about them. On the 20th, as I mentioned, the RSV with young people, we have a doctor coming from Massachusetts General Hospital for your Healthy Java to talk about RSV. There will be some COVID-19 and vaccination and flu updates as well. But parents, be in here and hear about this RSV. And then on the 21st, I don't know who's coming on then. So we'll let y'all know next week. As Carlos said, I got to put just a little more focus and work into the platform, and we'll get a lot better. All right. Toy, thank you for all you do. Sister Debbie, thank you. All right. I'm leaving. I'm rambling now. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being here today. And thanks again to our good friend and brother, Carlos Enriquez, for dropping knowledge, being transparent, and challenging us. Have a great weekend, everybody. Love y'all. Peace.